Welcome back to a special edition of Newsmaker Live with me, Kendall Burton. My guest this evening, Mr. Darrell Monthrop, the Cabinet Secretary, talking about recovery efforts following the Christmas Eve trough that impacted St. Lucia. Before the break, we were talking about the cost of relocating some of the residents that's, as has been called for, suggested be done by the government. But we have another call. We'll take that call and then we'll continue.
Yes.
Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello. Good night.
Good night.
How are y'all?
We're good, thanks.
I'm blessed myself. But we all sound so educated, you know. I would like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Is there something the government could have done to have prevented the 6 people from dying in the trough? That's my question. I'll listen on the air.
Is there something the government could have done to prevent 6 people from dying?
I don't know that could have been, how that could have been done. That would have been the long and short of it. I know it's easy enough, and that there's a want to suggest that the government should have notified persons that there was a particular weather system, but that is that is post fact. You know, given the extent of the rains, persons could say, well, you should have known that there was going to be that level of rainfall. That certainly was not known at the time that the predictions were being made. They did ask persons to, in low-lying areas, that did inform, the weather report did indicate that there were likely to be thunderstorms and flooding in particular areas, and that they did ask persons to be mindful of land slippages. So all of these were done. The timing, and of course electricity went, internet went, you know, so lots of things, and this happened quite early. So electricity got lost early enough, internet went, for some areas, quite early. So in terms of communication, there was a break in communication quite early. So some of the deaths, I'm not even certain the time of the deaths. So it becomes quite difficult, frankly, to say that government could have actually prevented those things. So the road that fell, and not canals.
That's near Deriso.
Near Deriso there. No one would have expected that road to fall in that way, and this is where those lives were lost. At least two lives were lost. So it becomes quite difficult to say that the government could have prevented those persons, at least those 2 deaths. You know.
Yeah, I think people expect too much from the government. It was a natural disaster.
Yes.
And we're sorry that people lost their lives. I don't see how it could have been prevented unless you exercise caution and even if you stay within the walls, the 4 walls of your house.
Even those within the 4 walls. I mean, the police officer who died, heroically, because he died trying to save lives, and unfortunately his got lost in that process. And so that's why we have to show a certain amount of, I mean, we truly have to be appreciative of those who sacrifice, because a lot of persons, I mean, we have so many persons volunteering during those disasters, or during those events rather. I wouldn't even know necessarily disasters, because during those events, who risk their lives. They have many persons, cadets, and I should have mentioned them earlier likewise, who, I mean, from Christmas, I won't say I haven't gone home, but certainly have been at work at Nemo, volunteering, doing distribution, doing deliveries, assisting in the recovery efforts. I mean, so policemen also who have been at work during those things, and as we say in one instance, losing his life trying to rescue others. So we have a lot of people to be grateful for and thankful.
Yeah, bearing in mind that their homes could have been impacted as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have another call. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah, I just fail to understand in that whole scenario what took place on Christmas Eve there. Time of Chantal, it was a trough. I can't recall exactly what it was. But government gave an early advisory. We shut down the town. How come in the case of that early notice, they never gave no notice as to that nothing taking place there? They had early notice for Chantal. How come they didn't have early notice for this one?
Chantal was a storm
on Christmas Eve. That baffled me. And we shut down the town, you know, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. So he's kind of asking questions as to what really happened between that time of Chantal and now. I don't know. He's kind of baffling to me. And again, if we knew okay, we was in a dire straits of something happening. Police could have gone on the road with a bullhorn, at least advising people by the market, look, man, you have to go home now, close down shop. Nothing of this. We have nothing like that in the place, you know. A bullhorn with Red Cross or whoever, the police, nothing so. I don't know. Something wrong somewhere, man. Questions that be asked. We should ask questions. Something was wrong. We had early notice, we shut down the town, and nothing happened. Christmas Eve, everybody in the nice time, merry time, and nothing, no notice, or at least early notice. Something wrong somewhere. I don't know.
I'm not a weather expert, but I believe that the issue is the difference in the systems and the ability of the Met officers to predict. Even in the case of the trough, the rains were expected, thunderstorms were expected. They did advise getting out of the flood-prone areas because they did expect that level of rainfall. But the actual degree or seriousness could not have been predicted. And that is the issue. That is the difference between the trough and Chantal.
I agree. I agree, but it's the same case with Chantal. Nobody never knew what was the degree of the thing.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same.
It's not the same. Chantal, there was a tropical storm, so there's a certain expectation. So certain things were, you had an opportunity, as per the protocols and what the projections were, what is expected. You had a protocol that was triggered, and so you had those systems and called that pre-strike meeting and the government was able to put all of those things in place. Now, I note you saying there, hey, with Chantal, government closed down the town and nothing happened. Because I remember some persons objecting to the fact that government actually closed down the town. So what government closed down? No. I'm stating that we can't always have our cake and eat it, in the sense that there are certain things that we put in place to cause and to protect lives. So no government would be callous about life. I mean, I heard or even read someone insinuating that the government chose not to close down and stuff to allow persons to shop, which is a ridiculous, suggestion. This
but
it's almost not deserving of response.
We will cut if our pants down again.
Well, again, I don't know to what extent I would say we got caught if our pants or panties down, or as others might want to suggest. There's a certain protocol, there's a certain system, and I mean that's why I said earlier about blame games. We have to learn from, because there's certain protocols over the years we've seen certain patterns, some things happen, and we learn from. We put systems in place so that they do not occur or they do not reoccur. That's the point. So because at one stage we weren't even paying attention to tropical storms till Debbie. We learned that storms can be we used to only worry about hurricanes because we had the experience of Alan. After Debbie, we knew that just storms can be as costly. Now we're learning after a trough that maybe a trough can be as damaging.
Okay, from now on, so we have to take everything into consideration now.
Yes. We ought to learn of our particular situations because some things are very localized. Because some things, you could have a flood in Bexo and Grosele safe and sound.
Dry,
Grosele dry. And St. Lucia is large. And even whilst, because one of the agencies that really also deserve commendation, and I imagine the Prime Minister has commended them, WASCO, and I think many more in the public need to similarly commend WASCO for its response. But also sometimes, even whilst we're making certain complaints, there are other things happening that we're unaware of. So if WASCO is out into the interior trying and repair its pipes, its damaged pipelines, we do not know what level of rainfall is taking place in that area and how it's disrupting their efforts. But we're in a dry part of the island.
On air because my Christmas is running now.
Sure. But we're in a we're in a dry part of the island and saying why these people not doing this or not doing that. So they have all of those issues that we really have to understand, because I don't think people are being callous. And it's certainly not from negligence either. Sometimes some things just do occur.
And some things take time. And considering the magnitude of the disaster, I don't think that's been appreciated by everybody. I think WASCO and the other utilities have done very well in recovering such a short space of time. We have another call.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, we're getting you loud and clear.
Yes, okay. I've just been listening for a few minutes, and I would have assumed that you are speaking about the Christmas trough that passed over the island.
That's correct.
Now, from the community of Dennery, and we didn't get so much of a blow from what had happened. But listening in, I understood you were saying that you are learning from past experiences, and Dennery is a community that you all should have really looked into. Because I can remember before Hurricane Thomas, it was that very same trough that came into the community through the water, into the watershed system, and dumped so much water in that community. And we were flooded, and thank God that it wasn't too late that happened, and people were awake and saw what was going on and tried to avert death as what had happened recently. Now, my simple, it's not a question but a statement, is that we should have learned from that. That trough that passed through Dennery, that the watershed of Dennery, and simply flooded out the community. Now, I understand that it was not really something that could have been seen at that point in time, and it came as a surprise to a lot of St. Lucians and the authorities. And I will say on the authorities because they themselves are playing the blame game, trying to push it on Martinique and saying that there was an issue with Martinique, and Martinique pushing back and saying it's not them. So I mean, somebody needs to stand up and say, okay, we dropped the ball, and we learned from that.
But you did admit that you joined late, but that issue was addressed.
No one knew it was happening in Dennery. You understand? So it's not something that is, I guess, is so predictable as it is. We just need to admit that as a nation and recognize what we have to build upon. Okay. Now, coming back to Dennery, the Prime Minister said that infrastructural work was done in Dennery. Let me just tell you that there is nothing much that was done in Dennery, except for the desilting of the rivers, which happens periodically during the year. Now, that alone, I felt a little more could have been done in Dennery, and the only reason Dennery did not flood this time is because the trough system didn't dump so much rain in that community, and two, that the tides were low at that time, because even when the tides are high in Dennery community, in Dennery village, the water does not go down. And at that day, from God, the tides were low, and the water receded into the ocean, and we did not have a backup in the community, and for people to lose furniture and for water to come into their homes. And the people of Ancillary, as much as I empathize with them, let me just inform them that the mangrove is not a problem. You understand? The mangrove is there to naturally help the whole situation, to help with the silting, to help with ease flow of water, and it's not a problem. The problem might have been at that time, maybe around that part of the island, there was high tides, and they got flooded. But we need to, as a nation, recognize our faults. Dennery community is a low-lying community, and I'm hearing that he's speaking about even Hurricane Allen and Tropical Storm Allen and whatever tropical storm he said a while ago.
Chatal,
that
Hurricane
we
Allen.
were not really looking at tropical storms. But let me push that further. We should be looking into tidal waves and looking into tsunamis, because we are on a Caribbean plate. We are on between two plates, the Atlantic plate and the Caribbean plate. And at any time, an earthquake can happen under the sea. The water can rise, and the communities close to the sea can be flooded, like that of Dennery and Vieux-Fort. These are low-lying communities. The airport can be washed away. As we see, the road was washed away close to the airport. The community of Dennery people could die. And there is no early warning system. This is the problem with St. Lucia. We wait for things to happen and for us to then say, oh, if we knew, or we should have put in place. We need to have an early warning system in the communities of Dennery, the city of Castries, Vieux-Fort, Soufrière, and other places on the island. We need to be proactive.
But because if I could interject, we do have those early warning systems in place. They are there, and I just want to make sure I'm not saying that we as in the authorities, the systems do not pay attention to tropical storms. I hope I didn't give that impression. I'm saying as a public, a couple of years ago, they weren't as focused on tropical storms. They were only worried about hurricanes. Now we're worried about tropical storms because we learned the damage, the consequences of storms. Now we're learning similarly potential consequences of troughs.
We have another call. Good evening, you're on the air.
With all the talking and the questions that are being asked, God said He changes the times and the seasons. Anything can come upon us unexpectedly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, because I want to respond to the previous call about the issue of nothing being done. Desilting is a major activity that prevents flooding, because if you did not desilt, you would have led to greater flooding, because it just meant the riverbeds would have been higher. By clearing the rivers of logs and stuff, you avoid dams being formed that would have led to flooding. So these are not these were activities that were taken in preparation for or to avoid floods or other events of that nature. So the government was responding throughout.
All right. Another call. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah, good evening, gentlemen. I just have a contribution I want to make here. This is not just for the two of you, but for the nation at large. I believe it's time. A lot of people say that it was a sign by God to tell us change our ways and all of that. I believe what it was is a sign to show us that our waterways, our water channels, they cannot support the capacity of water coming out from the hills. Okay? Secondly, it's time that we as a people realize that we are doing more damage to the environment than good. Perfect example. I walked by the Touge River, the Castries River, but by the Touge area. And if you see the amount of filth in that river. I grew up next to the Castries River. At one time, there were pigs in that river. People used to carry water to clean and to wash their clothes and otherwise. Right now, we do not have any one particular river that people could actually depend on being absent of pollution and other rubbish, which is man-made. We say it's a sign of God on Christmas Eve. Yeah, it was. Man doesn't create rain. So it was from God. But what we can do is to actually stop the pollution and stop the blaming of this person here or that person here. And it's time that we collectively come together and decide on a way forward. Okay? Definitely something has to be done about our rivers. Definitely. The rivers are drying up. They are polluted from the passage of Hurricane Thomas. They are highly silted. So these are things that we need to pay serious attention to. A simple example again. That road there, I believe that's Miku Street by the Castries, the cathedral. Before any little water, that area there is flooded. Something has to be done about the city of Castries. And it's such all the way from Menard Hill to Mondidor to Wapatat, New Village. Like, those waterways come down with all the garbage that people dump in the gutters. Okay, that comes and clogs all the drains in the city. So something has to be done about that. Okay? And I believe it's high time that we as a people stop blaming everybody else and we pay serious attention to
take individual responsibility.
Thank you. My contribution.
Yeah, thanks very much for that.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Good.
One of the other issues, though, is the health issues. People walking through that water, the increase in vectors, an upsurge in dengue. I know we had an increase last year, one death, at least one confirmed death. What's the Ministry of Health doing? I know we're working with PAHO.
Well, I mean, the issue is obviously we have to do more public education with all of those things, yeah.
We have another call. Good evening. Hello, you're on the air. Okay, we seem to Hello?
Very heartened with his comments because for a number of years now, we've been suffering. I hear people talk about the rivers cannot carry the volume of water. But in reality, what happens is that the trees and the foliage has been cut back so much that the water runs off at a much faster rate than the channels can carry. It also doesn't help when we have the problem of garbage that we continue to have. After the Christmas trough, and you look at the rivers and the sea, like VG and Shock, and you see the amount of mud and silt in the water. In Castries Harbor, you still have fridges and debris and rubbish and bottles still flowing. I mean, this has been going on for 30 years, and I don't believe it's a question of any particular government, because governments come and governments go and the rubbish stays.
Right.
You know? So we have to find some way. And if we're moving into a tourist economy, I mean, we have to do better than that. Come on, man. We have to. Everybody is not only the government, and they're the ones now at play and have the opportunity to make something happen. But we must get some serious recycling, some sort of policy in place with deposits on bottles, getting rid of the styrofoam containers, you know, for food, and we have to take this thing seriously. I mean, it's not to say we don't know. You know, St. Lucians are becoming more sophisticated and more aware and see how people behave in their countries, and yet still we continue to be, you know, a country of rubbish. You know, even by the roads we still have the problems with the containers and the receptacles and so on. But we have to make that extra effort in all areas, in all walks of our lives. But in the case of the rubbish, we have to do something now. Because every time you look at the sea after any major storm, or the mouths of the rivers, you can see everything, all our lives, the refuse of our lives washing down in the rivers.
Okay. Can I put you on the spot, caller?
Pardon?
Can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
You said something needs to be done. Can you make a suggestion on what needs to be done?
Or
is that up to the government as well?
$2 deposit on every plastic bottle. Right? And let every plastic bottle be worth $2. You won't throw one away. you won't throw that one away. Okay? That's my suggestion.
All right.
Okay?
I like that.
Let's start there. We can do one thing right at a time. If we do one thing right every year, in 5 years' time, we'll be living in heaven.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I think the caller touched on some issues. I don't know if we're going to the suggestion as to the price of the bottles, but the issue that is raising about garbage, and to your previous question, is about public education and sensitization. So to the extent that St. Lucians are aware of the consequences of their decisions, I'm hopeful that they would be able to make those changes. So the Ministry of Health needs to continue with its public education on how to avoid dengue and other contaminations.
Yeah. We have another call. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, good night.
Good night.
Well, I am an extension officer in the country, and I carried out a little study in the recent months. And what I have found is that the tributaries coming to our rivers, if you do a volume of water calculation on each of them, you realize the volume outflow of those rivers cannot sustain just the main tributaries coming to it. Likewise, if you put a 3/4 inch pipe on your guttering, when rainfall, the guttering will overflow. So what I'm thinking we have to do as a first step is those rivers down in the valleys leading out to the sea, we need to increase the volume of water that they can carry. So if it means we put a second outlet river with a riverbed that is a little higher than the original river, so that it only carries major water upon high amounts of water flowing down, then this might work. Or we need to double the size of those rivers outlets we already have. Not really lowering it because we have to keep in mind the sea level, but widening those rivers probably twice as wide as they are right now. You know, this is one of my suggestions that I wanted to call to say. Thank you.
All right.
As for that, I trust those at infrastructure and agriculture will take note. I'm not the engineer, so I won't comment on that one.
But it kind of ties back to a point that you were making earlier, and you didn't really get to complete about the relocation. Because it's one thing to suggest that you widen rivers, but bear in mind people live very close to those rivers and probably would have to be relocated as well. But you were talking earlier about the costs, but we never really got to finish that point.
Yes, we never got to finish that point. I mean, relocation is not going to be a cheap proposition, because if you're going to relocate, you're going to have to relocate persons in a developed area. And in fact, that's part of the issue for any government. If government were to build housing, and as an example, I'm using an example, public housing, there's certain minimal infrastructure that would be required, which is not going to be inexpensive. Individuals will do it for themselves and accept it for themselves at far cheaper. But if it's the government were to put a little something for them and say Sazot Kabamo, and they'll get into all of those sets of issues. So there is some serious costs and other issues as to how we perceive government that we have to deal with while we're thinking of all of those issues. So they're far from as simple as some are making them out to be.
Yeah. We have another call. Good evening. You're on the air. We've lost that call. But as we move to more towards tourism and become more of a tourism-based economy, we're talking about the Christmas Eve trough, but also we're talking about disasters in general. So we're looking at the passage of cargo and passenger vessels through our region, exposing us also to chemical spills, oil spills, and that sort of thing. Are we prepared for those?
Well, yeah, we do have protocols in place for those different kinds of events, and that's the point. They have particular events that you know of the probability and the risk of, and so systems are in place to respond for those when those events occur. The trough was not one of those because of the frequency of the event. But in fact, the one point that I certainly want to make, whilst we did not do as was not expected in terms of going and do warnings for the warnings of trough, immediately that the disaster occurred, the NEMO system, the National Management System, kicked in, was activated and responded, because the work of the Ministry of Infrastructure, the work by WASCO or the other public utilities are all part of what the National Emergency Management Response System is supposed to be. It is not NEMO with a separate office and utilities and everything else. It is all those entities. It's just the coordination is what that kicks in. And this has happened, and I think it has happened brilliantly, notwithstanding all of the finger pointing about who should have named what at which stage and made those sorts of notifications. The system has worked as it's supposed to after the disaster. Persons may not have been satisfied that they did not get, and again, it's not that they did not get to be informed, that they did not pay attention to the warnings that had come out. But even with that, there still was not the expectation, that expected rainfall.
Okay, we have a call. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for holding.
I need to say something too about this thing, the garbage.
Yes.
Passing just a few days after the trough, I walked down behind the dairy. It was disgusting and a shame to see the amount of old fridges and old stoves and marlies and these things in the river just behind Amos Bakery. I called from Black Mary, and it's so disgusting to see that. And as everybody is blaming the government, we, St. Lucian, as a body, we should know to take some pride in ourselves. Because these fridges and these washing machines, these barrels, I was tempted to go down to the river and see the names of the people that was on the barrel. They failed to realize these things are going straight into the river or into the sea. And when these things fall back, they're quick to say, government do this, government do that. We need to take some pride in ourselves too. That's all I have to say.
Yeah,
and then I need to say, my son is doing very good. He knows who's talking. All right?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but she makes a very good point. And the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority does have a bulk waste disposal schedule. And all these people have to do is call the solid waste department, find out when they're doing that collection, put it by the side of the road, make sure it's collected.
Yes.
Yeah. And every time we have a weather system like that, you hear the same story.
The same story.
Yeah. We have another call. Good evening. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, let me tell you.
Tell me.
See, a lot of people blaming the government. But you have to blame, you see what happened in Canal. You have to blame the contractors that do the road in Davis Road. That's where they show all the debris inside, it's down there. They never realize there is a ravine and there's a culvert and they're blocking the culvert. You see, people who don't know, they will just try to blame government.
But is it fair to blame the contractors as well? Because that silt would have been there for a while.
Because they don't know. You see, most of the time, when you give foreign contractors to do, they don't know where you have your ridiculous ravine or where you have your culvert and things. Right? They just throw the garbage anywhere. And exactly what happened there is through the contractor that was building the road under the UWP government.
But as a responsible citizen, you noticing that, shouldn't you have called somebody to clear it out or have it cleared?
No, but exactly right. What I'm saying, even though you call them, they will not take you on. They will not listen to you. Who is you?
Okay.
As a layman. Listen? Because most of the contractors, they're looking for trucking, cheaper trucking, wherever you could dump it, they dump it. Because that little ravine doesn't bring all this water to cause this damage. It's because of the blockage of it, the water build up, and it will have a problem.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
In future, that's what you have to, especially when you give somebody a contract, you have to realize where they're throwing the debris. Okay?
Yeah, fair enough.
That's the advice I give to this government right now. That's my contribution.
Okay, thank you very much. You were talking about the utilities before. There was a suggestion that there was not enough coordination between the relief agencies as well as the utilities. The Minister for Technology, Dr. Fletcher, went as far as suggesting that moving forward, he will establish some better coordination between the two telecoms companies, Lime and Digicel, more specifically, so that we don't have the sort of break-in communication that you alluded to earlier.
Well, I think to properly quote Dr. Fletcher properly, I don't know if it's just the lack of communication between the utilities and the emergency management things. It's the break in the communication provider networks and the systems of communication, and so to ensure that we're always on in any disaster. And I think the point that he's made is certainly, is certainly valid, because whatever the mechanism that is to be implemented to get that done is what is important. That we should not, or solutions need to continuously have access to communication. We should not be in a case as was happening on the Christmas Eve, that some providers can get service and others some subscribers can get service and others can't. Whereas in a roaming, if you go into a different country, you will roam on another network. We should be able to make some arrangement for access. So something obviously needs to be done, because as I said earlier, with the internet service down so quickly, because it was down early, some communication couldn't get up to Castries. Even the Met offices between Vieux-Fort and Castries VG had issues, during that day. So these are things that we have to take a closer look at to see how we can respond. But I'm saying this as some of the gaps that remain. But again, these are from lessons learned. The point is that both, at any time, those providers, those telecom providers, would do their utmost and have tried to restore service at the fastest. And I do want to comment, whilst Lime had certain issues and perhaps they suffered more, I think they suffered more damage than did Digicel. They did the utmost to try to restore
because of the nature of the
event and the nature of the network.
And you also had Wasco interrupting the service to do their own connections.
And Lucelec's own disruption affected Wasco, because everything is linked. Everything is linked. So if there's no power to generate to power the pumps, Wasco certainly can't produce water. So everything is connected.
30 seconds, Mr. Montrop. Closing parting words.
Well, there's several things I want. You want to, at a personal level, extend my sympathy, my condolences to all those families who lost loved ones during this recent disaster. I think the entire country mourns with those families. That's one. I also want to be able to thank all those persons who have in the many different ways. I mean, I did not mention or single out any of the young persons, or single out young, but there's several young persons who, not just those who volunteered and who had Nemo and Red Cross and doing all, but the children who agreed to give up toys, you know, because it shows a certain
and especially
side,
at Christmas.
especially at Christmas, to want to give up your toys to others and stuff like that. I mean, that takes a certain amount, and maybe these are lessons we should truly treasure, and maybe we should focus on, and maybe I want to encourage media personnel, instead of focusing on whose pants drop or who's this or that, you know, to focus on those human interests side of it, to see those who have given up their time, those who are doing all the volunteering, to recognize them, to big them up, the Cadet Corps and the YEAC and all those other groups that are involved in the relief effort, to be able to thank all the donors, I mean, because we have lots of persons who have responded quickly and with cash, to St. Lucian's for the spirit, because I think the one thing it shows is that our spirit will not be washed away. I mean, the Christmas, we didn't do the rum drinking and fetting, but we were still able to show, I think, what is truly remarkable about us as St. Lucians, you know, that we could still pull through together, notwithstanding. And in fact, perhaps that's a good segue for me. I mean, whilst I'm not going to talk about independence celebrations, but one of the themes for this year's, the theme for this year's independence celebration, at least that was selected prior, was in unity and dedication for the good of the nation. Because in this Christmas spirit, in this crisis, in this disaster, St. Lucian showed a certain magnanimity, a certain unanimity, more than magnanimity, but also unity in terms of the effort to try and put us back, you know, put ourselves back on a solid enough footing. And so all of the agencies who have responded, whether it be WASCO, whether it is Ministry of Infrastructure, NEMO, the Met Office, all of the voluntary groups, I mean, the disaster committees, and these are things that we obviously also need to re-examine. How do those communities work? And for all the many people who have continued to give and still are out there giving, because there's still many needs. I mean, whilst we did not continue to focus on it, I mean, in terms of rebuilding the infrastructure for WASCO, that is certainly a critical need for the many families who've lost all of their appliances and all of their things. And again, whilst we focused on ancillary canneries, view fort and stuff, you do have persons in other areas, parts of the island that were affected. And so we have to be able to recognize that and continue to provide support. I would like to encourage people to donate to the Return to Happiness program, and because that's a particularly important one, certainly for me, from my own vantage point at any rate. So on behalf of that, I want to thank all St. Lucians, but more importantly, and I think perhaps the most important thing, is for us to be conscious of our own behavior. That it is our own behavior, the decisions we make now, that will determine the kinds of impacts of future events, whether it be a trough, whether it be a hurricane, whether it be a thing, so that we also take those weather reports more seriously, you know.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Moncho, for being with us this evening, and thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for calling. Join us next week for Newsmaker Live. See you then.
Thanks. Thank you very much.